Welcome back on Mad About Markets. We're discussing the large opportunities in India's defense sector and the mega thrust on indigenization. So this is the part of the show where we talk about both the yays and the mays. Let's talk about the yays, which are the tailwinds for the sector. For one, it is a big market like we've been talking about and a large buyer in the form of the government of India. And why just that? All the other governments around the world as well. In India, we are seeing easing policies for supply, and that's adding a key momentum driver for the segment. The other one are high entry barriers and for newer players, so that keeps the existing players in a relatively comfortable spot. The opportunity for exports is huge, and so are the targets. And then there have been a lot of capex plans made and capex committed by existing players. So those are a bunch of tailwinds that we have for the defense sector over and above what we've been talking about so far.
Well, I take your point, Mangalam. There is a lot going on for the sector, but it is time now to flip the coin and look at the other side as well, because you have a long onboarding cycle that is definitely a negative for the sector. Capacity constraints, and especially when you compare it to the kind of demand we have, is also a negative. Incomplete tech transfers from foreign partners, and that is why the reliance on them is also something that is not working for the industry. A long working capital cycle, something that I guess also spoke about today, and the high risk of...
Says that the regulator won't allow products that curb exits or exchanges to charge for public data. Also adds SEBI is open to innovations like algo trading, but the process must be transparent. The Union Cabinet approves a production-linked incentive scheme worth 19,500 crore rupees to boost the manufacturing of solar modules. Also approves the national logistics policy. Union government is likely to extend the free ration scheme by another 3 to 6 months. The scheme was first introduced at the start of the COVID lockdown. An official announcement is likely soon. CBI gives a clean chit to former corporate lobbyist Niira Radia. Tells the Supreme Court no criminality was found in taped conversations of Radia with politicians, industrialists and government officials. Government had intercepted these conversations between 2008 to 2009 as part of a probe into tax evasion. Ratan Tata has been nominated as a trustee of the PM Cares Fund. Former Supreme Court Judge K.T. Thomas and former Deputy Speaker of Lok Sabha Karya Munda also nominated as trustees. The big newsmaker this evening, one of the world's biggest bankers, is warning of a recession but is upbeat about India's prospects. JP Morgan's chairman Jamie Dimon spoke to Shireen Bhan during the company's India Investor Summit. Dimon pretty much ruled out the prospects of a soft landing for the United States economy and said a mild recession or a hard recession are the likely scenarios. He warned investors to brace for volatility and flow of funds, saying markets can get fickle. Speaking about India's prospects, Dimon said China's supply chain is still not secure and that could benefit India. Dimon also said he hopes for India's inclusion in the JP Morgan Global Bond Index.
One thing I could project with certainty is volatility in the markets. And because you can't have all this turbulence, this is going to go on for a while, yet you don't know where rates are going to change. The dollar is very strong. America is still strong. Is it going to be a recession? What's the real effect of QT and getting rid of negative rates? You know, Europe is probably going to recession. That creates huge amounts of volatility. And unfortunately, that kind of volatility, I mean, you look at emerging markets and the strong dollar, you have to go country by country. You know, markets can get pretty fickle, particularly when you're investing in emerging markets, you know, venture capital, you know, things where small changes in assumptions can change the value of what you think something's worth quite a bit. So they should be braced for flow of funds that they don't particularly like. And, you know, the other thing about the dollar is that an economy which is outperforming other people relative to expectations will probably have a stronger currency. And America is still outperforming, I think, what most people kind of expect, and that may go on for a while. So the dollar may not strengthen, but I'm not sure you're going to see it weaken either. I think a soft landing is probably a very small chance at this point, but you know, mild recession, hard recession, they're all possible. And it's hard for me to give them odds, but they're all kind of possible. And remember, when I say get ready for it, I'm also talking to companies and investors where my real point is we're prepared for it so we can serve our clients. We're going to be serving clients in India regardless of whether it's a hurricane or a mild storm. You have people like America who want to be your ally and partner in many more ways. And And then I think you have a little bit of a gift. This is not, what I'm about to say is not anti-Chinese, but as every nation looks at, and every company looks at supply chains, they're going to have to diversify more. And a lot of people say China isn't as secure a supply chain and therefore have to move manufacturing to somewhere. And I think India could be a huge beneficiary of that.
And you can catch that full interview tomorrow at 11 a.m. right here on CNBC-TV18. Russian President Vladimir Putin has expanded his war effort amid reports that his troops are losing major territory in Ukraine. In a rare videotaped address, the first since his troops invaded Ukraine, Putin announced a partial military mobilization decree. Russia's defense minister has said that the decree will see 3 lakh additional personnel being called up to serve in the armed forces. That's not all. Putin also extended his support to referendum calls made by Russia-backed separatists in Luhansk, Kherson and Donetsk. Putin also accused the Western nations engaging in nuclear blackmail, said he will use all available means to protect his people, and added, and I quote, "This is not a bluff," end of quote. Ukraine's President Zelensky has urged the West not to be blackmailed by Putin's threats.
I want to remind you that our country also has various means of destruction, and for separate components and more modern than those of NATO countries. And when the territorial integrity of our country is threatened, to protect Russia and our people, we will certainly use all the means at our disposal. This is not a bluff.
So what exactly does mobilization mean? It is a prominent decree enforced by authorities in wartime. It basically enables recruitment of more troops and brings together a nation's resources to support war effort. Governments in the past have turned to conscription to create huge forces and align the resources to conduct war. During the First World War, European great powers had used conscription except the United Kingdom. During the Second World War, the UK mobilized 22% of its population for direct military service. Back home, during the Kargil War of 1999 with Pakistan, India had set in motion Operation Vijay that mobilized over 200,000 troops, of which 30,000 soldiers were part of the military operation. Stock markets came under pressure across the world after Vladimir Putin signaled an escalation of the war in Ukraine. Investors are also awaiting the US Fed decision later tonight. Sensex slipped over 200 points and Nifty slipped almost 100 points, snapping a 2-day gaining run. Banks and mid-caps also closed in the red. Global markets are treading with caution ahead of the rate decision by the US Fed. What will be the impact of the rate hikes on asset classes? Jamie Dimon believes from stocks to Bitcoin to gold, the rate hikes will lead to an adjustment in the value of everything. However, he also said that the impact on India will be relatively limited since most companies have room for growth.
Yeah, bond prices affect stock prices and dramatically sometimes. And you've seen some of that. You know, I think that interest rates may have to go up another leg, another 50, another 100 basis points. That will have an effect on stock prices. It'll have much more of an effect on growth stocks than value stocks. And less of an effect in India, because in India, even though you have a lot of growth stocks, you know, your growth prospects are so good for so long, it's just going to have a different effect on people, you know, investing long-term money in India. But to give you a shocking kind of number, you know, 1% interest rates, $1 a year is worth $100. At 10% interest rates, it's worth 6 or 7. You know, it's worth $10. And at 10% interest rates, you know, 65% of the value is in the first 10 years. At 1% interest rates, something like 6 or 7% of the value is the first 10 years. So anything that has cash flows way out here, you know, are going to be diminished in value by rates. And think of, by the way, Bitcoin, gold, certain types of real estate, raw land, venture capital, you know, growth stocks where they're putting a lot of cash in now and hoping to get profits down the road. So these rates adjust everything differently, but they will adjust the value of all things.
And you can catch all the Fed action live from Wall Street and Washington from 11 p.m. onwards. Tune in for our special coverage. The Indian rupee weakened against the dollar today as investors brace for the US Fed decision. The rupee ended within touching distance of the 80 mark near its record low against the greenback. After 3 successive months of inflows into India, Credit Suisse has studied the source of funds. According to the report, 87% of the FPIs come through global emerging market funds and sovereign funds, and only 13% account for India-dedicated funds. Credit Suisse is positive on financials as they think that the sector is undervalued and see a possibility of earnings upgrades. However, the report suggests that India remains vulnerable if there is a global scare over emerging markets. In the banking space, rating agency CRISIL expects banks' asset quality to start improving, saying GNPAs will improve by 90 basis points this fiscal, 100 basis points by March 2024. CRISIL's data suggests that the biggest improvement will be in the corporate segment, where gross NPAs are seen to be falling below 2% next fiscal. SEBI chairperson says that the regulator won't allow products that curb exits or exchanges to charge for public data. She says that the SEBI is open to innovations like algo trading, but the process must be transparent.
If the regulator senses that there is inadequate disclosure, then the question is the investor being misled? This is a little bit more aggressive form of the same issue. Is the investor being conned? If your business model is going to rely on a black box which is not open to sunlight for disinfecting, if it is not capable of being validated and audited, and your claims cannot be audited and validated, it cannot be permitted. A business model which relies on the assumption that once the customer is in, it's very hard for him to get out, we don't like it.
All right, that was SEBI chairperson Madhvi Puri Burch. Let's move on. Shares of Swaraj Engine zoomed in trade after Mahindra & Mahindra said it will acquire additional 17.4% stake in the company. M&M will buy the stake from Kirloskar Industries, taking its stake in Swaraj to over 52%. Shares of M&M as well as Kirloskar Industries also surged following the announcement. Volkswagen will hike prices by 2% across all models from next month. The German auto giant has cited rising input costs for the decision, but hasn't disclosed the new price list of its cars yet. NDTV's promoter group moves the Supreme Court against the Securities Appellate Tribunal order, imposing a 5 crore rupee penalty for alleged non-disclosure of loan agreements with Vishwa Pradhan Commercial Private Limited. SEBI had initially imposed a penalty of 25 crores in December 2020. The Appellate Tribunal reduced the fine amount to 5 crores. The government is likely to extend free ration scheme by another 3 to 6 months. We learned from sources that the government has adequate food stock available to extend the scheme. The scheme was rolled out at the beginning of the COVID lockdown. A formal announcement is expected soon. In a bid to promote clean energy production, the government has approved second tranche of the solar PLI scheme, allocating additional 19,500 crore rupees as announced in the budget. The second part of the PLI for solar PV modules is aimed at increasing production of low-cost solar energy.
The outlay for the tranche 2 of the PLI scheme is 19,500 crore of rupees. We expect to see a total module manufacturing capacity of 65 gigawatt coming out of this outlay, an investment of about 94,000 crore of rupees, and direct employment to about 2 lakh people and indirect employment to about 7 lakh people. And these capacities, when they come up, would not only make India self-sufficient in solar manufacturing, but we will also have spare capacities to export.
So you had said that the subsidy being given will taper off after 5 years. There, of course, is a sunset clause which has been introduced. How confident do you seem over that prospect as far as reducing import dependency is concerned? Of course, you said that India will be self-sufficient now, but till what extent the current scheme has succeeded? What has been the status of the previous announcement so far?
So the previous bids which were awarded, are all those capacities are being implemented. There were 3 successful bidders. One of them has made better progress than the other 2, but that is understandable. But all those capacities are on way. The time given is 3 years, so it is still early days. We have only seen 7-8 months after the letters of award.
All right, that was Indu Shekhar Chaturvedi, the Secretary for Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. The Cabinet has also approved modifications to the Semiconductor program. The program will now offer a flat 50% financial incentive for all categories. Earlier, the incentives varied from 30 to 50% across categories. Additionally, a fiscal support of 50% will be provided for project cost, capital expenditure permitted across technology nodes for establishing semiconductor facilities across the country. Let's listen in to Raji Chandrasekhar, Minister of State for Ministry of Electronics and IT, in conversation with Ashmit Kumar.
What this has done is removed the lack of a harmony between packaging incentives, compound and display fab incentives vis-a-vis silicon fab incentives. Number one. Number two, it also brings back the focus on the trailing edge nodes, which still constitutes in India a large part of the semiconductor requirement and the semiconductor market. And so therefore we have, today the Cabinet has allowed us to offer the 50% support to both the trailing edge and the leading edge nodes.
There is clearly, sir, a shifting of focus in terms of initially it was predominantly fab, now it's fab plus ecosystem. It's now not just leading edge but also leading edge plus trailing edge mature nodes. What prompted the government into taking this action?
No, I think a part of it is as we go along, we are also learning in our own interactions with all of the investors and all of the semiconductor majors about what their expectation is, how they see the Indian market, what they see as devices that will be required for the Indian market, and what devices are required by the electronics market that is growing as well. So I think this is all part of our efforts at further fine-tuning and harmonizing a scheme and a program and a goal and an ambition.
Right. Let's move on. The Road Ministry has issued draft rules making it compulsory for auto companies to install seatbelt alarm systems for all seats of a vehicle. Reports suggest that these alarms will be made mandatory in four-wheel vehicles under the M category, which includes vehicles carrying passengers, and also in vehicles under the N category, which includes vehicles carrying passengers as well as goods. In a bid to ease congestion at ports, the government has allowed export of broken rice consignments that are in transit till the 30th of September. Remember, the government had banned export of broken rice on the 8th of September. Time for a short break, but coming up, CBI gives a clean chit to former corporate lobbyist Niira Radia, tells the Supreme Court no criminality was found in taped conversations of Radia with politicians. Details when we are back. Welcome back. Now to Court Corner. After 12 years of investigation, the CBI has given a clean chit to former corporate lobbyist Niira Radia. The CBI said it did not find any criminality in the taped conversations of Radia with politicians, industrialists and government officials. Remember, government had intercepted these conversations between 2008 to 2009 as part of a probe into tax evasion. Ashmit Kumar joins us with more. Ashmit, major relief for Niira Radia. This has been going on for almost a decade now.
Well, that appears to be the prima facie view at this stage. The Additional Solicitor General, Aishwarya Bhati, informed the Apex Court that the Supreme Court had directed the CBI to conduct these investigations, preliminary probes. These probes were conducted, preliminary investigations. The reports were submitted before the Apex Court. And from what is coming from the ASG today, it appears that there is no criminality that has been discovered by the CBI. That is the view that is coming from the Additional Solicitor General. Let's also keep in mind that the Apex Court also, to substantiate that, has sought for formal updated status reports from the CBI, has given time to the CBI to come back and file those updated reports. And that's perhaps when the court is expecting more clarity on what the CBI discovered in the first place. But nonetheless, important to note that the Supreme Court, these proceedings happened during Supreme Court hearing Ratan Tata's application. Ratan Tata had filed an application in the top court essentially saying that his fundamental right to life had been prejudiced, had been hurt on account of leakage of those Radia tapes, and towards that end has sought two actions. Number one, has sought action against those responsible for the leaks, and number two, has sought a clarification, a restrictive order from the court that since these tapes were originally, since these conversations were intercepted for purposes of tax evasion, it cannot be used for any other purpose. That's the order that he's seeking from the Apex Court. The Supreme Court for now is placing the matter for further hearing on October 12th. Also important to note that there is a PIL in this case by the Centre for Public Interest Litigation. They are citing public interest for making these tapes public and for allowing them to be, for sharing them on the public domain. That's another application that will be decided. So clearly, more clarity awaited on October 12th. For now, the ASG informing the court that CBI has not found any criminality in those conversations.
All right, CBI finding no criminality in the Niira Radia tapes. Let's move on. CBI has arrested ABG Shipyard Group's founder and chairman Rishi Agarwal in connection with an alleged bank fraud worth 22,800 crore rupees. The CBI has accused the company of duping a consortium of 26 banks which had lent to the firm, making it the biggest fraud in India's banking history. The Supreme Court today expressed concern over hate speeches of mainstream television channels going unregulated, hearing a slew of petitions seeking directions to regulate hate speech. The Apex Court observed that while freedom of speech was important, hate speech cannot be allowed. The court also wanted to know why the government was remaining a mute spectator. Meanwhile, the Mumbai police submits charge sheet in the mobile loan app case, claims to have frozen over 400 accounts with around 14 crore rupees in balance. Police also claim to have frozen over 200 crypto wallets which were used for routing money out of the country. The police has arrested 18 people and said 10 more arrests are to be made involving Chinese nationals. The government has made new appointments to the PM Cares Fund. Ratan Tata has been named as a trustee along with former Supreme Court Judge K.T. Thomas and BJP leader Karya Munda, who also served as former Deputy Speaker of the Lok Sabha. Former Comptroller and Auditor General Rajiv Maharishi, philanthropist Sudha Murthy and Teach for India co-founder Anand Shah have been nominated into the advisory board of the fund. And before we wrap, the Hurun Rich List for 2022 is out and Gautam Adani is on top. There are some other interesting data on the super rich. Shilpa Ranipeta is here with more.
Well, 1,103, that's the number of Indians who have a net worth that exceeds 1,000 crore rupees. This number is as of 31st of August 2022, according to data compiled by IIFL Wealth and Hurun India. Now, this number is also 96 more than last year. Cumulatively, the value of these 1,103 people tops 100 lakh crore rupees for the first time since the report was launched. Now, there are 12 people worth over 1 lakh crore rupees each and $221 billionaires. Now, this is 16 less than last year, but that's mainly because of a rather sharp weakening in the rupee over the last couple of months. Now, let's get to the people who populate this list. Adani Group's Gautam Adani is the richest Indian with a net worth above 10.94 lakh crore rupees. Reliance Industries' Mukesh Ambani, Serum Institute's Cyrus Poonawalla, HCL Tech's Shiv Nadar and Ace investor Radhakishan Damani are some of the other notable names on the top of this list. Now, the youngest on this list is a teenager, 19-year-old Kevalya Vora, who co-founded quick commerce app Zepto, which gained popularity as more and more people choose 10-minute deliveries. The successful listing also of beauty e-commerce retailer Nykaa has made its founder Falguni Nair the richest self-made woman in India with a net worth of 38,700 crore rupees, overtaking Godrej Smita V. Krishna and Biocon's Kiran Mazumdar Shaw. Now, in terms of geographies, Mumbai continues to be home to the most billionaires with 283, New Delhi has 185 and Bengaluru, 89 billionaires call Bengaluru home. According to Hurun, India Inc.'s resilience in the face of global uncertainties can be best illustrated through the comparison of the indices. Now, the broader Nifty performed better than its global peers in the 12 months to September 8, 2022. It dropped just around 6%, while Nasdaq dropped 23% and the Nikkei dropped 29%.
Right, thank you very much for joining us, Shilpa. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you for watching. News continues right here on CNBC TV 18.